Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, May 19th. Let's hop in. For the accountability section today, I can go fairly quickly. I've been playing Psychonauts as best as I can. I also kind of feel like my insomnia maybe is settling down a little bit more, so I'm getting to a more consistent time frame, which is nice, but usually it's about that point when things start to change again and there is no consistency in consistency. But yeah, I've been playing Psychonauts and doing a lot of playing of Psychonauts, and I just don't get it. I think I want to also replace here this private match. I think we can play Bloodcraft today, and let's not try to do that because that's going to be too much work. I guess the arena contest is out for me. I didn't make it to the final stage. Seemingly these final stages do seem to go weird time frames. Like, one final tournament ended over the weekends. This one is ending on a Wednesday. You would think that they would be more consistent around that. Yeah, I would love for somebody to hop in the chat. And certainly I don't want spoilers, and so I will definitely try and get maybe some reviews or something on Psychonauts when I'm done playing it. But I am, according to the game itself, 10 hours in. Basically, it's only slight spoilers to say I just awoke the Milkman as a character, and I'm almost to the point where I have all the basic abilities, I think. But it just doesn't feel like a good Mario 64 comparison. It doesn't feel like it's a good Mario Galaxy comparison. There's just entire swaths of content in there that really does not match up with the story. And I feel like that's kind of the problem with all Double Fine games, is that the gameplay never matches up with the story they want to tell, because Double Fine has this very specific kind of telltale comedic storyline that they want to tell, which would work in a almost point and click adventure style, or just a episodic style, or even a walking simulator style. And then you have Brutal Legend with the real-time strategy concept, when really obviously everybody would have preferred that just to be an action game, a beat 'em up action game. And then Psychonauts is this 3D platformer gameplay concept that's just not balanced at all. Every single boss I've fought, as far as the last 4 bosses, which have come fairly quickly, become bigger and bigger bullet sponges, and it just gets incredibly frustrating to figure out how to get through a level, which are getting more and more cryptic and confusing. I spent probably 40 minutes wandering around a level, not realizing that you could walk inside buildings. And because I couldn't walk, I didn't know you could walk inside buildings, I couldn't find any of the items that were needed. Then in the exact same level, there was a puzzle that required you to jump over a gate, and there's really just no indication, as the way the game was playing in its widescreen modern computer run, to explain that, oh, when you walk through the gate, the other gate closes or opens, so you have to jump over, so you walk out of a gate to open another gate, and that was a nightmare. There's also several cheap places where you could just fall to your death. Also in that same level, like, it was like a 3-hour level, just way too long, totally should have been broken up. All the levels are too long, but at least the previous ones had been broken up. Let's hop into some gameplay. We don't really have a lot of Bloodcraft decks, but we'll try this tournament one. And so once you've gotten to what is at least the second act of maybe a 3-act play game, it does feel like it's just going to be incredibly long and grindy. You start to be able to increase your health somewhat, which you absolutely need to do. Otherwise you are just going to get cheap shotted in every boss battle. But then there is also a item that you need to purchase, and they tell you to basically save up for this item at the very beginning of the game, and I didn't pay enough attention to that, and so I had to grind out currency to get this item, because the game was warning me not to enter the next level unless I had the item. I'm not sure I really needed the item, but I will say that the currency arrowheads and psychonauts 800. Save up 800, don't spend it on anything else. There is a fairy type item called Dream Fluff that will refill your health if you're dead, or you can use in a different scenario. Interesting. So I think this is something you probably want later. No, I did that wrong. Totally did that wrong. Yeah, it's just so super grindy, and collecting items to increase your health pretty much needed to happen earlier. You should have not been able to purchase the item you needed anyways. It should have been earned. It would have made a lot more sense that way. There's really no reason why there is currency in the game at all, other than I'm sure Double Fine had a contract. They had negotiated a terrible contract with Majesco, I'm sure, that required certain elements such as having purchasable upgrades and levels, 100 levels. It's no coincidence that there are 100 fairly arbitrary levels in the game. There's also a massive amount of collectibles in the form of figments of imagination that are these flat chalk outline drawings of things that, if you were trying to make a good game, you wouldn't just have an artist draw all of that, because there's glaring missing content also in the fact that many levels don't have any kind of enemy to fight at all. So, and when you do have an enemy to fight, I've seen 2 or 3, and that's it. And yet then there's also a sliding ability, kind of like Jet Set Radio, which doesn't really make sense either. There really is no reason to have a movement mechanic sliding on the rails when a more generically useful movement mechanic would be better useful. Like in a more modern time, you would assume that the main character would just have those Healy skates in his shoes and he could roll that way. But then there is also a roll effect that does occur later, and that's just a good movement mechanic, but then it just highlights that the actual walking mechanic is too slow. But what is missing is a run mechanic, and it would make so much sense for the main character to be able to run. There's still an incredibly high amount of cutscenes in Psychonauts. It's like You literally will have a cutscene that is an in-engine cutscene, and then you'll have a pre-rendered cutscene, and then you'll have another in-engine cutscene, or vice versa. You'll have a pre-rendered in-engine, then pre-rendered cutscene, back to back, or within at least a couple minutes of each other, which really highlights that if this was just a Telltale game and you were just talking to people, it probably would be a more interesting story and a more interesting game. It really makes me question what in the world is Psychonauts 2 going to be if it comes out in 2021 or 2022. Like, there's just a total different audience and a different style in which games are made, so you pretty much need to be on top of your game with the platforming for any platforming levels. The writing is not that good on Psychonauts, whereas I thought it would have excelled there. And I would like to know the characters more, but almost all the characters have disappeared from the story, and I don't expect that they're going to come back at all. Alright, we need to destroy things. Can we do this? This and this.
Blood and pain awakening.
See. And then evolve this. Okay. I guess I probably wasted a evolve here.
Ow. I lost. You're tough.
Yeah. Might have had something there. But yeah, I don't totally think you would need to kind of remake Psychonauts 1 and have it more of a story. Make maybe a prequel to the game in which Rasputin, who is the main character and supposedly snuck into this Psychonauts training summer camp for kids, have a prequel where actually he was there and the year before, and he became great friends with all of the characters, and then at the end of the game there's a big twist where everybody's minds get erased, and then you could potentially establish the characters more. Otherwise you just have to move forward, and you can certainly do that too, and I fully expect that he would be great long-term friends, summer camp style friends with all of the characters in Psychonauts 2, although there are too many kids in the camp, frankly, so that's gonna be weird. It definitely feels like there would have been an idea that you would have gone on some kind of mission for each of the kids in the camp, but yeah, kinda don't from the looks of it. Like, yeah, a lot of it has to just fall on the shoulders of Tim Schafer. I think Tim Schafer is the problem at Double Fine. Even if he wasn't the problem when Psychonauts was being made, which I think he was, because he was also trying to run Double Fine as a business and be the person in charge of making the game, which is just overextending yourself, and that's never going to work. He's definitely the problem at this point, because he is the old person who is probably not adding anything to the conversation with the new programmers and the new people who want to do different things. And I imagine with Microsoft now owning Double Fine, we will start to see things under the Double Fine brand that that have nothing to do with old Double Fine properties, which would pretty much just be Psychonauts and Brutal Legend. Yeah. Yeah, there's,
Each life has a different value.
I think, a very low chance that Double Fine is just all going to be about Psychonauts and
On to the
Psychonauts
next
only.
life.
And in a funny way, Tim Schafer is a lot like Gabe Newell. You could definitely make that comparison where Gabe Newell is kind of, well, not intentionally, at least superficially the stopping block for Valve moving forward as far as making new products. It isn't just Gabe Newell. It's basically the entire secret shadow management and the terrible way in which Valve has allowed itself to be organized. But the old people are either obsessed with
You were done for.
still, even now, making Call of Duty and Half-Life games, whereas it would have made so much sense for there to have been a structure where new people come in and then they're immediately told, we need you to make a new game that is a new IP. We want it to be completely different. They tried that for Artifact, but then once again the secret management came in for Artifact and said, well, we need to make this make money, and so they try to monetize it in a kind of crazy way. Whereas Valve, as a company, should absolutely be in the opposite position of having to make games that make money. And it's a crazy thing to say, though. But yeah, Valve makes money on every sale on Steam, so they need to be putting out some small game every year just to show a commitment to having decent games on Steam. I mean, if Valve was just putting out visual novels and point-and-click adventures and puzzle games even, that would be fine, really. That also proves that the people that work at Valve are actually working on video games and not simply just doing customer service. So, yeah. Get back to Double Fine, I wonder if we might not see a company called Double Fine, owned subsidiary of Microsoft, that is just way, way better as a product. Let's see. 3 here. And here.
Access.
Go! Go!
Where should I drop this lightning bolt? Oops, my hand
Hit
slipped.
that. Alright. Yeah, but as far as the accountability section, like, I just don't get Psychonauts. I'm struggling through it. I really thought I was gonna have fun with it. Even if it was just kind of a bad comparison to Banjo-Kazooie or Mario Galaxy or Mario 64, I would have been fine. But I suppose it fell off a cliff and it's just too grindy and too frustrating.
It's an expensive business.
And I wouldn't be super surprised if at the end of the game I feel fairly happy with that ending, that last half of the game, and
Ow!
that's why there's more reverence for it. Although arguably this might be another one of those cases where nobody actually was ever talking about Psychonauts anyways, and it was just the mainstream video game media who was hyping it up from the beginning. That is also a possibility.
You must make the first move.
Blood and pain awakening.
Okay.
Time to do mighty things call on me again.
And
Hey,
just go
check this out.
involve here
Let me bathe in bloodbath. Massacre.
and hit that. We have enough news to cover today, so we should just start covering the video game news. I don't want to be left with any leftover.
The zenith. For there, I will rise.
Now, theoretically, we're supposed to do
Let us
a
conclude.
follow-list cleanup on Fridays, and I guess we'll continue down that
You're
path.
lost. You're tough.
Yeah, I don't see how this deck wins. How did this tournament deck win? This might very well be an example of where the more difficult the competitor, the more complicated and difficult the decks are, and sometimes the high-level meta decks fail miserably against just random people at a low ranking. Anyways, we have a game here called Where Wind
Time to
Becomes
get
Quiet,
started.
which there's
Time for me to
a
prove
lot of
myself.
blinding brightness here, which is a little too much for that logo. This looks to me like one of those walking simulator kind of puzzle games, which, yeah, they can be decent, certainly. We're seeing a cat wander around, we're seeing some animation. A lot of this is probably just asset flipped 3D models, although at a certain point I don't know if that's really asset flipping if you bother to polish it somewhat. English and Russian 1259. I guess we'll put that on the follow list. The only other thing I suppose to talk about is Giant Bomb is now just having the Bombcast on Tuesday. There seems to be absolutely no podcast on Friday, which, okay, that's what I thought was happening, but I wasn't 100% sure that was what was going on. But they started to talk about E3, and they confirmed that they are going to E3 in the sense that E3 is in some way happening physically. Like, although if you had asked me 2 days ago, was E3 happening 100% digitally or not, I would have said it was happening 100% digitally. But they're going to do something for E3. Which, when they started to talk about E3, the fact that all the Giant Bomb East people quit, that very possibly is the answer there. They just didn't want to do E3. E3 is always a lot of work. It's in part definitely a reason why I don't bother to cover E3 content, even just watching streams of other streamers. It's a lot of work for, frankly, not a great quality of bit of information. Let's see. 3 cards. Can't fuse with anything right now.
You don't belong here.
See, what I often see or feel E3 is it's a lot like Gametsu's website. Over the course of a very long time, like 3 or 4 months, you will get a lot of teasers, announcements. Here's another teaser, here's another screenshot, here's another thing. And a lot of that is very repetitive stuff. Particularly Japanese companies love to do that. They love to just try and add another car to the hype train every couple weeks on a game. And that's pretty much all E3 is it's just like 1 week's 1 week of as much advertisement as they can shove down your throat as possible with no real information coming out. Like, you don't get release dates. You often don't get what consoles it's initially announcing on, not let alone what consoles it'll actually be releasing on by the time a game is actually out.
Rain drowns the wails of the damned.
So yeah, it's just a lot of noise. E3 digitally is very much like what it would be like to physically be in the E3 convention, the Las Vegas Convention Center. Just a lot of noise all around you, people playing boomboxes, people fighting for attention, and a lot of distractions. Or a lot of waiting in line to play one game and missing out on all the other announcements and things to see in Las Vegas. So yeah, I can see why the former Giant Bomb East employees would just say, we've done this for many years and we're just too old and we're too tired and we don't want to do it again. Inherently, you also know that this would have been the year where they would have had that step back to realize in the past they had been doing that much work. In anyways, because E3 didn't happen last year, it was just straight up kind of postponed / canceled. So they had that time to take a breath and reevaluate their life. And as soon as people have enough time to reevaluate their life, they realize that they're not happy with their current situation and they want to make a change. That happens a lot, certainly. And frankly, employers know it, and that's why they often do try to keep people overworked and too busy. They want them too tired and not thinking straight so that they can't reevaluate and go apply somewhere better.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
It is possible totally that the new company that owns Giant Bomb is planning something massive for E3. That would be the right move, certainly, is that to do something very big and very massive, and just possibly merge Giant Bomb and GameSpot together and try to have even a bigger event. E3, in a weird way, would also be a great point for any video game review site to bring in any potential employees and say, if you want to work for us, we'll give you a job to come to E3 and you run around these booths and you write up stories based on these presentations. That way more things can be covered. That's like calling in all the troops, as it were. Of course, it would be fairly sucky to be told you might get a job if you buy a ticket to E3 and fly to Vegas. But for some people, they would have been doing that anyways, so I wouldn't be surprised if that wouldn't be a bad way to do things. It also is a decent time to introduce new people, like introduce them in the most hectic of times, instead of
the uncharted desert awaits.
instead of introducing them in the slow times. That way you can really test their mettle, as it were. And you probably would want to secretly do it and say, this is the Giant Bomb fan coverage. And make it feel like it was fully voluntary. And maybe you make it fully voluntary. Or it's just, you just say, hey, we're running a contest for asking people to make coverage of of E3, and then if you like any of the people as far as the work they did, you hire that person. And if you don't like any of the work that any of them did, then you don't hire anybody.
Blood and pain awaken me.
Hey, vengeance was not activated at that point. Storm.
You must become a demon to kill a demon.
Do we have anything we want to evolve here?
Hey, check this out!
Back into go ahead, curse me.
So yeah, it's very possible that there isn't any real big conspiracy more than that, as far as why people left.
This here ranch will never know that.
We still are generally, in my opinion, for video games, in a weird position where E3
Think it might be hammer
is gotta be fairly accelerated when it happens. We need a lot of companies to announce that their games,
Just go
that the
with
video
the
games are back,
flow.
their games are coming out right now, next week, next month. We can't have a lot of announcements that say they're coming out 6 months, a year, 2 year, unannounced.
Ow, I lost. You're tough.
And I don't know how you pull that off, because the only way you really pull that off is if you announce that, oh, this game was going to be an Xbox exclusive, but it's actually coming out on Xbox and a PC, because at the moment you can't get an Xbox Series X. That's kind of the only help there. It's not like it's particularly easy to even
Time to get
cheaply
started.
and easily build a computer these days, but they're not as scarce as the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles. But yeah, I doubt we'd run into a scenario where people got bored of video games because there was one dry spot in what has been decades long years of there being not particularly dry spots of games.
This here's all mine.
Like, I don't know what would really kill video games in the mind of kids other than something even better than video games.
I won't hurt you too much.
Moving on, we've got a game on Steam here called Guardian of Lore, which looks like it is a 3D platformer or 2D platformer, which seems to be somewhat based off of, well, this looks more magical, going into a magical book, but then it seems to take you into more of a Central American looking area. And see, notice you've got this big 3D lady on the corner, and then it cuts. There is something weird about this game in that you are doing some forms of puzzles, and then when you actually do need to do some fighting, it's like a 3-button combo that you have to input. And time seems to almost like freeze. So this game may not really play that well. $17.99, English, Spain, Spanish. I'm gonna put it on the follow list though, because the graphics do look interesting and the area looks, the types of areas and the story that it seems like it's telling seems to be interesting. It seems like you may go to several different locations.
Pain and suffering are what I live for. Time to retreat.
Let's see. TechRaptor has an article. Maneater Steam and Nintendo Switch release is arrive next week. Which, okay, that's an announcement for a game that I believe has already been announced. Let's see what we want to do. 1 damage. 1 damage. This and this.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
As promised.
Get ready to fly.
Let's go in there. Next we have Essays on Empathy. This is a Devolver Digital game, which seems to be a combination of several small games. I suppose we can put this on the follow list and see how people like it or not. It's $12.99 English only. See, part of the problem that I have this knee-jerk reaction to is that this feels like this is probably going to be a very preachy game, and that's fine if you're making a game to have a message, but it feels like it's asking quite a lot to ask for $12.99 to then preach to me on a message. See, I see this scar here, and I assume it's talking about cutting, but I guess I could be wrong about that. It could just be somebody has a scar, and somehow in the gameplay that makes sense. Let's see. None of these damages will do anything. So let's just do this.
And suffering are what I live for.
Evolve here.
Let's settle this, you evil blood. You don't
Do
belong
this.
here.
A fitting end. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Canary in a Crater, which looks like it's just kind of a basic platforming Dig Dug clone. $7.99.
Splendid
English
brutality.
only. I'm not seeing enough game here to make that interesting. And in all fairness, I don't think too many Dig Dug games would catch my interest anyways. Let's see. Oh, still waiting for Wrath. I guess we do this. This.
As excited as I am. Are you? Well, are you?
And then that. Then in return.
So excited.
This here's all mine.
You forfeit your life.
see if we can play here. Next we have a game on Steam here called Mecha Snake, which looks like nothing. $2.39, English only. Alright, let's hit this.
Vows, promises.
Wait, not yet!
Allow me to
Get
take my
that.
cut.
Damn it. I surrender.
Back to the hideout.
In return. Next we have a game on Steam called Farlanders Prologue, which I assume this doesn't have anything to do with the Farlands in Minecraft. Yep. Just looks like it's got some cutscenes, which is kind of interesting, but then it looks like it is a fairly generic colony sim game. Well, that does kind of have enough polish, so I'd be potentially interested in putting this game on the fall list when it comes out. But the actual demo, I would say no.
Give me our names, bud.
You need backup?
I imagine there is still a high chance I would not really be interested in playing that game.
It was all
Give 'em
for
our
sport.
names, bud.
You need backup, Bear?
Okay. 4 damage.
Vows, promises. Have some then.
And then do that.
Damn it. I surrender.
Back to the hideout.
Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Rogue Legacy 2's Drifting Worlds update. It adds a ton of new content. It does feel very weird though that they're just dripping out new content instead of just putting a new finished game out. They've had enough time to have finished the game as much as the version 1.0 needs to be finished, and then they could have released DLC later. This guy could potentially run out of cards. Let's see. Gamma Sutra says the Blaze Ball developer the game banned, and that's $3 million to expand its Barmy Fantasy League. I don't know what Barmy means in that case.
It was all for sport.
Okay.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
Sister.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
Let's see, do I want to evolve here? Not yet. Here we have a game on Steam called Bombing a Graffiti Sandbox, which looks a little too low res for a graffiti game. That seems like that would be a big mistake. If you're going to have a graffiti simulation, you would want it to look realistic, and so that you could actually do good graffitiing.
Now your soul shall stand.
This is $5.94 with
Delightful.
allegedly full audio in every language it supports. Yeah, I don't think that concept is polished for that type of game. I think that makes sense. Right, well, 3-6.
On to retreat.
This whip is an extension of myself.
Let's defile the battlefield.
Hey, check this out. I'm sick of being
Okay,
a faceless
what stops
scrub.
this guy from being able to move? This one could maneuver at any point.
Whoopsie daisy.
But I can't attack the other guy anyway, so we'll just play
Mankind's tenacity will
everything.
exterminate you vermin. I shall give birth to a new world.
So all he has to do is attack with this and attack with this, and he'll win.
Thunder roars like a beast from the void.
Of course, he can play some other ways
Cycles
too.
on.
I lost. You're tough.
Oh, I can tell it's gonna be one of those days already. One of those days where we're gonna just struggle highly to get a single victory, let alone 4. We have a game on Steam here called Wave Crash, which looks like it's some kind of positional puzzle game. A head-to-head battle puzzler. I feel like I've seen one other game that is sort of like this. It does look interesting. $8.99. It does have single player, English only. It's shared split
Time to
screen,
get
player versus
started.
player.
Activate.
Yeah.
Enhance. Fire.
Yeah, I think there might be something to this. Also, though, this could be just repetitive and boring. You may not really have too much to do here. This may literally just be a fighting game with no single player story or anything, which that is something I would have to consider when going into fighting games, is that there are some fighting games that don't have much of a story, if any. Next we have a game on Steam here called Connected. This looks like this is a pipes game with maybe a couple different colors. That doesn't look terrible. It's free to play. It's English only. Unfortunately, since it's free to play and it has no in-app purchases, there's really no reason for me to cover it. So I'd just say check out Connected if you want to play a pipes game. Although, in all fairness, there's a decent chance you play pipes games as mini games inside of bigger games enough that you would not really have that desire. Next we have a game on Steam called Thug's Law, which is clearly a low polygon GTA clone, for lack of a better term. Looks terrible. $9.99, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article here. Portal 2 update has been released by Valve. A small Portal 2 update has been released that has also changed the authoring tools, which means the Steam Workshop creators and users should be pretty happy. What does it mean in English? The most important thing is that users should be aware that the Steam Workshop 100 megabyte file limit has been removed, so after 10 years, creators can do pretty much whatever they want to do with the tools they're given. Yeah, 100 megabytes is a oddly limiting factor for a mod, but okay. I could see why they would have started with that limit. Even though Portal 2 is over 10 years even though Portal 2 is over 10 years old, there's over 100,000 entries in the Steam Workshop. And at the moment, there are over 1,700 people playing Portal 2 on Steam. Let's see, the other patch note says they fixed custom match with no lights, disabling lighting for the rest of the play session. They fixed the model viewer and face poser not opening. They fixed the demo playback for workshop maps. They fixed some texture corruption. They moved 32-bit Linux binaries to Linux 32 miscellaneous. They removed the 100 megabyte workshop limit. They added a bench demo name, whatever. I would almost assume that the reason this was done is that it was some intern, some new employee at Valve doing that. But also, there is Portal Reloaded, which is the user mod that is effectively going to be the closest thing to Portal 3 I think we'll ever see, and I wouldn't be surprised if Portal Reloaded was running into, as a Portal 2 mod, was running into that 100 megabyte limit. Gamasutra has the same article we'd already talked about this, that Twitch plans to introduce local subscription pricing for around the world, thus making it cheaper. There is also some scuttlebutt, apparently, that YouTube has potentially changed its terms of service to say they can monetize and run ads on your channel even if your channel is not monetized. I feel like that was already the case, and we had already kind of said that if that occurred, people would be up in arms, but honestly, people are already up in arms. But yeah, I also feel like that kind of felt like that's what they were going to do, is that YouTube is going to try and force fewer and fewer people out of, well, into the YouTube Partner Program, and they're going to try and make it so only the top 1% of YouTubers can make any money, and then everybody else is going to either have to leave YouTube and take their content with them to a different site, which we don't really have a competitor to it, or YouTube's going to run ads all over it. And I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube couches it in the way that they're going to run ads for YouTube products and services, or YouTube TV or something like that. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. There are going, if people are intentionally not running ads on their channel, and then all of a sudden YouTube's running ads on their channels, then people are going to be upset. Or if people are just demonetized and at some point they wanted to run ads on their channels and they find YouTube is making money off their channel, people are going to be upset. And we're already at the point where I can't blame anybody for just using YouTube Advanced or some other ad blocking version of YouTube to block the ads. The massive amount of ads that show up in the middle of videos, mid-roll ads and all of that garbage, has been just intolerable on YouTube for 2 or 3 years now. So once you pretty much guarantee that you're not even really supporting the content creators, there's no reason for the content creators to tell people not to use ad blockers or go to different sites, which inherently that's what it's going to do. And see, Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or some new site, it would be very easy for them to just say, okay, actually we're going to now introduce our own video site. And there's some of that, but none of it really works. That new Bitcoin type service, blockchain type service, Chia, which is based around space, it certainly would make a lot of sense if somebody made something like that and they told you actually inside the space that you're holding storage for is YouTube videos, and as such you are helping support YouTube content creators by hosting their footage as a backup to like an original server. That the technology doesn't just immediately work.
Wingless child, let the heavens be your shepherd.
So that is something to consider. But yeah. But yeah, if there was some kind of blockchain that helped compress and store video, that would be great. And there's some attempts on something like that. But again, this also might be a case where YouTube has misphrased something, or is thinking about doing something. But yeah, YouTube also and Susan Wojcicki has not looked particularly good lately. It's like she has not she's not won any new friends or anything. With the whole trying to give themselves a award for being pro free speech, when I think pretty much nobody would agree with that. Of course, it is also just incredibly boring to hear YouTubers complain about YouTube. So let's move on. Here we have Gamatsu says read-only memories Neurodiver is adding an Xbox Series version. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything here of bigger interest. Not really. I think I've got everything set as I want it. That way the audio won't play back unless I actively try and get the audio to play back, which is, so everything is back to normal. In a funny way, I spent a day or two goofing around to effectively set everything back to the way it was originally. And that is certainly one way tinkering often ends, is that you are going in circles, but when you go in circle the second time, you have a tighter loop. And that tighter loop means the coding and the programming is better. Right.
What you need is a nice. What you need is a nice roaring flame.
Okay.
True excess.
Ooh, that's hot.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Outworld DLC, The Three Brothers for PS4 and Xbox One is now available. Let's see what Outworld is as a game. Partial nudity. Wasn't expecting that. Outworld. It's tagged as an RPG game. It's mostly positive, so why is this not on my follow list? Maybe this game just looked a little too RPG-ish. But honestly, if I was gonna play a Diablo-esque game, this is not that far from that. Yeah. And this isn't Path of Exile, where that game resets and has an online, always online component. Man, I don't get why this isn't on the list. I think that should be on my wish list. I should check this out. This came out March 26, 2019. Not a particularly old game. Although that wouldn't really affect anything.
There is no escape from the apocalypse to come.
Okay, this one's all me.
The gods will know fear.
There we go.
Blood and pain awaken me.
There we go. Think I can win. Wow. Let's see. Gamatsu has the Falconeer Warrior Edition coming to PS5, PS4, and Switch on August 5th in Japan. Does this have a video? Nope. Video doesn't want to play. If I reload this, would this have a video? Nope. Doesn't want to play. I'm still having massive issues with my network settings and just desperately trying to figure out a way
Blood is spilled.
to get it to actually work and stop messing up. When honestly the real solution is just to buy a new cell phone. Let's see. Sorry, got quiet there again. Super NES and NES, Nintendo Switch Online to add Caveman Ninja, Magical Drop 2, and Super Baseball Simulator 1.000, Spanky's Quest, and Ninja Jaja Maru-kun on May 26th. Which these all definitely look like the old NES games that you get for having Nintendo Online. That lineup is particularly bad, though. As far as the English focus here, Joe and Mac is the only game I even recognize, and the rest of these are just scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as games. Yeah, they kind of painted themselves in that position where you can't really fix it or do anything. Would this kill somebody?
Life's a gamble. May as well have fun.
You must make the first move.
Will it be crimson red? You have a good eye.
Oh, I played that wrong.
Splurge. Consume it all. You disappoint me.
Yeah, I could have played that better. I definitely could have played that better. But yeah, Nintendo's online service is completely a mess and has not improved.
I lost. You're tough.
Speaking of Nintendo being a mess, they also announced the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo, which the problem with this is when you use this this amiibo, you can return from the surface to the sky at any point, even inside dungeons. So basically you're getting a ability through physical DLC to be able to return at any point versus having to use a save point to get to that to load. Now it probably isn't too hard to hack some NFC tag to emulate an amiibo if you didn't want to actually pay for the toy, which are overpriced pieces of plastic. But certainly that sucks. It also kind of highlights Nintendo's commitment still to amiibo for some reason, whereas I can't imagine it's any easier to make an amiibo toy right now than it is to make a video game and sell it, or a piece of DLC software and sell it. Chip shortages aside, like, it wouldn't be crazy if Nintendo said, we're going to make Nintendo-based toys that aren't in any way related to the video game stuff.
Time to
But
get started.
while this shortage is happening, but I don't think they'd bother to worry about going down that route. This is Skyward Sword HD, not to be confused with Breath of the Wild. So this is the re-release of Skyward Sword. Otherwise, Nintendo's been fairly quiet recently as far as any new games. I guess except for maybe that Mario Golf game that they just announced, which that looked interesting. But that can't be the only thing coming out in the next 12 months. Otherwise, that's going to be very frustrating. Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu has the Resident Evil Infinite Darkness anime begins airing on, I believe, Netflix in the United States on July 8th. This character, Leon, does not really look like Leon to me. And this character here, I think is supposed to be the president's daughter that was saved in Resident Evil 4, and it sounds like her, but she looks like oddly kind of too old for the number of years that would have passed. If anything, maybe it almost feels like the anime might be a prequel and they aged her up. And for that, I have no idea who this character is, and I'm not certain who this character is. It's 3 years after the Resident Evil Vendetta in 2017. And so I don't know if canonically, storyline-wise, it's 3 years after Vendetta. It doesn't feel anything like the Castlevania anime. It is more, this is CGI stuff. I feel like his hair is just the main problem with Leon. It doesn't look incredibly terrible as far as this trailer, although it doesn't look incredibly amazing either. Leon looking weird with the suit and all. And so yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what you're really looking for in a Netflix anime. Are you calling this anime? This is definitely one of those examples of Netflix lying about what anime is, because CG anime marketed and made for a Western audience does not fall under my category of anime. If it was CG anime targeted to Japan first as the first market, then I'd call it anime, sure. But this is just a CG animation telling a weird story that I wouldn't be surprised if it is completely unrelated to any of the Resident Evil games. It feels a lot like it's maybe gonna try and rehash some of the elements of Resident Evil 6. It may very well try to push Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield as characters, push their story forward, because they are effectively gone from what Resident Evil is now. Like, we're done with them, I think, forever. And I think we are done with Raccoon City. And I think we are done with everything that will undoubtedly be referred to as the first generation of Resident Evil, for in favor of whatever Resident Evil 7 and 8 establishes. I don't think I want to do anything. I could restore 3 health and draw a card, I guess. There is a slight difference as far as what Castlevania did, because Castlevania as a series was dead. Like, Lord of Shadows 2 had come out, and that's pretty much all Castlevania had to say. I don't think there really was any game after that. And even the Lord of Shadows series was rebooting the concept of what Castlevania is. So, to take general concepts of a fairly long dead, relatively speaking, video game series and take from what was almost nothing to make something is one thing, but in Resident Evil's case, there's something there. Resident Evil is far from dead, and so you really have to wonder if it's the right move. Or if this is going to hurt. Deal 3 damage. Then evolve.
Hey, check this out. Where should I drop this lightning bolt?
And then seriously?
Oops, my hand
I was
slipped.
one short. But you never know. Like, Netflix could pull it off. They could put a more interesting, longer running story. They don't have to do as many action sequences. They don't have to have as many of the same zombies attacking over and over again like a video game does. Since the Resident Evil series is more focused around bosses and big boss events, it would be easy enough to cut out a lot of the grindy fluff in the middle. Particularly sequences where you just have to kill a certain number of enemies in a arena, or you have to wait for a certain amount of time in the arena. Okay, let's do this.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
And then this.
Do not seek what is not there.
Okay, this one's all
Try to win here.
Awaken, for the end is near. You've been chosen.
There we go. Yeah. They might be able to put more story into it. Here we have a game on Steam called Operation Armstrong, which looks like you're just looking through the eyes of cameras in a VR game. Maybe blocking off some paths or playing stealth.
I'm already a
Yeah.
proper lady.
Well, aliens are walking around. a game also where you're using your cell phone, which seems like that's way too much, and then a party game, which seems like too much. Like there's just way too much of too many different opposing concepts here. $24.99. And I don't know, I'd like to see this succeed, so I'll put it on the follow list, but I have zero faith in that working. Right. Do we want to evolve? Can we evolve? Do we want to do this?
I shall give birth to a new world.
By your will, O Lord.
Yeah, I don't think that helps any. Here we have a game on Steam called Galactic Mining Corp, which looks like a mining game, but it looks like it might be a particularly fast mining game. Which there might be something to that.
Soul without sin.
I don't think so, though.
The real battle begins.
The actual gameplay mechanic here just feels kind of crazy. It's tagged as a collectathon, which I don't even know what that really means as a game. Let's see. A space mining roguelike. Roguelite. And you've got a bunch of weird looking characters. A bunch of different things. $11.69 single player. I'll put this on the follow list. Because maybe somebody could sell me on it. It's already 95% positive, so there might be something to that idea that I'm not understanding. This would prevent me taking too much damage. This would not help me enough. This would kill just like one person. That wouldn't do anything.
Truth is waste. Learn what is needed.
Okay. See if that works. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dinner with an Owl, which looks like a weird point and click game. It feels like it's in line with some of the other weird horror point and click games. Let's see if we can find a comparison. Nope. It's free. It's English and German.
No way!
So, has this developer made anything else? No. I might think about doing it at some point, so I'll put it on the follow list, but I also kind of have to wonder if there's any real reason to play a game that's free when I can just say check it out if that looks interesting to you. Alright. What do I want to do? 12 damage. Do it.
No! Call on me again.
I shall give birth to a new world.
See, next we have a game on Steam here called Just Action Natural, which
The world
is some kind of
cycles on.
online werewolf type game. Find the real person in the group of a bunch of AIs and shoot them down from the looks of it. Free to play, online PvP, English only. Can we save the day? Here. solve this guy. This would recover 2 play points and deal 3 damage. This would summon something fast. This wouldn't do anything. So draw a card. This would summon something. I think you've got to do this. And then
Vows, promises of pox on them. Allow me to take my cut.
that. So all he would need to do is do 1 damage and he could defeat me. Here we have a game on Steam called FTD2, which looks like it's a tower defense game. Although it feels almost like it was a fire fighting game. $9.99 English full audio, allegedly. Yeah. Does not look interesting. At a certain point in this game, I am going to just grind all these characters to level 200 or whatever their max is, 150, 200. And at that point, it's going to get incredibly frustrating to potentially lose, because you won't get any skill at all at that point. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Finding 21, which just looks like a terrible low-effort puzzle game. $2.69, English only.
Time to get started. Is fighting and despair
Next,
all
we have a
you
game
know?
on Steam called Darkest Hour, which just looks like a dark screenshot horror game. Calling it an interactive fiction collectathon. Is collectathon just a new catchphrase people are going to use? Early access, 99 cents, English, Spanish, Latin America, and Portuguese, Brazil. I don't think that there's a game here. I'm not seeing any game content or any gameplay mechanic. Seems like you are just scrolling around and looking for things. Effectively approaching a hidden object style game. Next, we have a game on Steam called Notbots, which looks like it's probably an asset flip first-person shooter game. I kind of like this idea of robots with different faces and you're shooting at them, but there's basically nothing to this health bar. There's basically nothing to these levels. It's free, English only. And see, if this was one of those games that said it was a student project, I don't think it really matters. It's still not quality enough to really cover. Here we have one called a bunch of Asian characters in 101, which looks like some kind of Chinese game, simulation game, horde game is what it's tagged as. It's $1.79, Chinese only. I can't even tell what it is. Let's see. Next we have VR Europe Tour, which doesn't look like much of anything. $1.19. Whole bunch of languages. Doesn't look very polished. I think if you're going to have a travel VR experience, you would want it to actually be photorealistic and just 3D scans. Or if you are going to animate it, you need to animate it very well and probably have more of a narrative. I feel like you probably could go to a tour company all over Europe, just a whole bunch of different tour companies, and say, hey, in the middle of this pandemic, let's give you $1,000, and you're going to give the tour as if somebody is standing here. We're going to record you and pay you for that footage, and then we're going to put it in a VR game for people to experience all around the world, and you're going to have much more reach than you ever could. Also, we're going to negotiate it. Almost certainly a tour guide would negotiate it, or tour company would negotiate it enough so that they would set themselves up for any potential losses, which almost certainly there wouldn't be any potential losses. Even if I had in VR gone on a tour of like the Louvre Museum, I'm almost certainly, if I went to the Louvre Museum a second time, I'm almost certainly going to then want to take the tour again and not really remember half of what was said in the VR tour.
You were done for.
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam here called Canyon Shooter, where you seem to be on a parachute, just always shooting down, kind of like Downwell with a little bit more control. The problem with this game is it just doesn't look like there's that much variety. It seems like this would be an interesting sequence in a Contra style game, but it doesn't make sense as the only thing that you do, and it seems like you probably are just constantly going to be blown by the wind and constantly are working your way around a somewhat small area. Eventually you're going to run out of sky and end up having to go somewhere deeper, or that's going to be the end of the game. $29.99 for this game. That is ridiculously expensive, so I have to skip that. That's just too much. Let's see.
Bow down, loser!
I know when I've lost.
Let's see.
Feel my fury.
Next we have a game on Steam called Athena Trivia, which looks like it's just a trivia game for $3.49, English only. Here we have a game called Moxina, Moxina, which looks like a horror game for $4.49. Might be something to it, or it might be nothing. Yeah, I don't know. Seems like it is kind of one of those games where you just have creepy characters chasing after you. Taiwanese folklore. Moxina, apparently is how it's pronounced.
Drop this lightning bolt.
This would do 4 damage.
Oops, my hand slipped.
Which I guess we can do that.
Oops, my hand slipped.
Next we have a game on Steam called Super Hot Potato, which looks like nothing, for $3.74. Try and burn through all of these as quickly as possible. Here we have a game called Fail to Win, which is tagged as a puzzle platformer, which kind of looks like a joke game. Like, cause how in the world are you gonna fail or not fail in this scenario? It seems like it's very easy to blow yourself up. Yeah, this looks like a joke troll game. $15, English only. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough there.
pardon my sins.
Let's go.
Life's a gamble.
Roulette
May as well
vampire.
have fun.
Here we have Allura, Curse of the Mermaid. I did look at that webtoon all the way through as far as the 70 pictures or so that have been made called The Little Trash Maid, because there was a game based off the art there. Honestly, there's like no text in any of them except for some guest strips. There's probably 4 or 5 guest strips of 71, which is a fairly high thing, but webtoon seems to encourage collaboration between other webtoon creators. Anyways, I looked at webtoon in general, and like most of the comics on there are unrecognizable. I recognized like 1, and that was it out of about 100 that I looked at. The gag of a Little Mermaid, except for it's covered in trash because the ocean is full of trash, is worn thin even in 70 images with no text, because there's no text and because they're not really pushing enough of a story. Like, at least when you had, I hate to have to compare it to something as awful as Captain Planet, but at least when you had Captain Planet, they created a narrative, a bad guy, a reason why there would be constant trash being dumped into the ocean, somebody to fight, some way to try and fix it. There's also weirdness in that the Little Trash Maid character seems to kind of thrive and love the trash, not suffer severely from it. So it's kind of mixed messages. Yeah. So it didn't look like anything particularly interesting. In all fairness, online comics, I've known a couple over a very long time that are fairly interesting. They start fairly interesting. They even go 10, 15 years long if they have a narrative, but they kind of just never wrap up either. There's a big difference between being able to just always continue forward and never stop polishing and working on your art versus having a deadline and finishing it. And as much as it sucks that sometimes things get canceled, and comics in Marvel and DC particularly get canceled, there is a certain logic around some control there, and some actual finished story. I definitely have known some comics that have gone on for years and years, and then they just abruptly stop, and they don't have a conclusion. And that's not something that I want to engage in with at all. That's annoying. Even if there's like a middle ground there where they stop working on it, but they ended at least an arc. That is the other thing I find annoying with anime too, is that the anime translations often end after one season. Mangas often get canceled sometimes without finishing the story, although I would say mangas are a lot better than any other media for actually finishing the story. And I get it if somebody becomes ill or dies and they can't finish it, but it can be very frustrating. Let's see.
Oops, my hand slipped.
Well, on to the next project.
Anyways, as far as what this game is, Allura Curse of the Mermaid, it's just a match 3 game for $5.39, English, French, and German from HH Games. Let's see.
Ow, I lost. You're tough.
Tech Raptor has the same article. Nintendo Switch Online adds 5 games to take it past the century mark, which means they now have 104 games. Not that games have been coming out since an entire century ago, 100 years ago. No. Alright, well, it's not working, so instead of banging our heads against this wall, let's see if we can bang our heads against a different wall. See if we can do a little bit better with an unlimited bloodcraft. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Buildbox Engine adds a revenue share of up to 70%. I've never heard of Buildbox Engine. If this is what it makes as far as products, that's not particularly good. So, yeah. 70-30 split, the same split that that Steam offers, seems to be acceptable here. Although in all fairness, if you are paying 30% to an engine creator, which is not a terrible price, but then you are also paying 30% to Steam, that doesn't, I think, probably leave you with 40% of profits. It probably leaves you with something closer to 47% of the profits, but that's not a lot of profit. And certainly that highlights why so many companies want to use their own internal engines. But there is definitely some concern there as far as whether you'd really want to use Buildbox in the first place. I think you can probably get slightly better deals using Unreal Engine and Unity Engine, or at the very least you'll have less frustration and less trouble making a game, which that can be worth its weight in gold. TechRaptor has this article updated. IGN employees pin an open letter over a removed article. Now, I kind of, without reading this, have slightly changed my opinion here. Like, what's that old phrase? A girl has the right to change her mind. Because while it was stupid in the first place for them for IGN, a video game website, to post a article about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's occurring right now, conflict or massacre or apartheid or whatever is the most accurate one. I think apartheid probably is the most appropriate one to use. While it is highly irrelevant and inappropriate for them to have put out that article in the first place, and it would have been perfectly acceptable for the upper management and the editors to do what their job is. Literally, an editor's job is to say, no, we're not covering this article, this is not relevant to video games. You're stretching here to make what is a bigger topic relevant to video games, so you can talk about it when you're not even speaking from a point of authority or education, which, yeah, there's just huge problems with video game reviewers trying to write political articles. It would be the same as if the sports beat editor who talks about sports all the time tried to write an article about politics in the Middle East. That there are specific political Middle East war correspondents out there who are the experts and should be reporting about that. So yeah, had the editor told them at the beginning, no, you can't publish this, this is not a direction we're going, I would have been fine with it. On the other hand, it is almost a censorship issue when a management of a company comes in and they remove your content after it's been published and censor it. Like, and so I think I kind of half agree with them when they say it's actively harmful and highly disrespectful to remove articles after the fact. But honestly, I don't think I can agree with them, because that's what news journalists do all the time. It's very common to have to print retractions or remove articles after the fact when there's mistakes of fact. And this isn't probably a case where they're making claims that there were mistakes of fact, but it's not unheard of generically to see an article pulled down or removed. But it is somewhat unheard of to remove an article based on just feedback from the fandom. Yeah. So it's kind of 2020. Like, I still don't think I can side with the IGN employees, because at the core of it, I know the IGN employees are SJWs and should not be working for IGN in the first place as a corporate entity. And I think this probably is an incident that's going to really highlight that to IGN's management, is that these people are flaming SJWs and will take the opportunity to talk about anything except for video games in a time where there aren't really enough video games to write articles anyways, and they should be doing everything in their power to be as good at their real jobs instead of sidetracking the story or trying to sidetrack the conversation about things that aren't their jobs. But yeah, if I was a video game journalist working for somebody and my editor told me, no, I can't write an article, I'd be a little peeved. I probably wouldn't do anything about it. I'd probably just be peeved for a day or two and then move on. If I wrote an article after getting approval from the editor, which I assume they did, and then upper management above the editor took it down, I think both me and the editor at that point would be fairly peeved. But also, I don't know if we'd really complain that much either, because it just kind of happens that things get taken down. You just move on with your life. And like, undoubtedly there will be a scenario where writers are very, very passionate about something and they really like that article they wrote, and then it gets taken down for some ridiculous reason. But at a certain point, I guess you want to be professional. There is this next issue, certainly, of the IGN employees then taking what could have been a private conversation and taking it public immediately, which is the very much the SJW Karen mentality, is we've got to fight this fight in the public, where this could have been a fight, certainly, or a complaint that happened internally, and then maybe there would be more of a better result. Around that idea, maybe. it really feels like there is a lack of common sense, certainly amongst both the employees and the management. And see, I don't even really want to care to read this, so I could be totally wrong about what's being said one way or the other. But there's clearly a lack of common sense amongst all employees. Unless this is really a case where somebody just pushed the publish button and they should not have been allowed to push the publish button. That could be the other factor here, is that there is just a lack of control as far as who publishes what, and a group of employees or a single employee has just gone rogue, publishing something that shouldn't have been published in the first place. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. 87% of Take-Two's $3.4 billion net revenue just came from just digital sources. Which, yeah, that kind of makes sense, considering they're talking about GTA Online, and let's see, what else? NBA 2K and Red Dead Redemption 2 and Online, Borderlands 3. I don't think there's any in-app purchases in Borderlands 3, but maybe there is. That would certainly suck if that turned out to be the case. But yeah, I really haven't gotten around to playing Borderlands pre-sequel, and I probably should do that. You get into these loops where you're constantly looking for something to bring back the passion in video games, if you're playing like enough video games as I am, like and particularly if you're playing things that are fairly old and a little disappointing, like Psychonauts, or slightly draining with like the visual novels I've been playing before that. And pinball certainly sparked my passion for pinball, playing the Pinball Arcade lineup, at least the games I own. But that doesn't like inherently revitalize a desire for... It didn't really revitalize a desire to play video games as much as it built a desire to play pinball. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has an article here. To support 2 players, Arcane made Deathloop's levels more open than ever. Apparently Deathloop is in preview mode. And I'll also say some of my ad blocking has decided to stop working lately. Somebody shifted all of their anti-ad blocking technology around, it seems. There, sorry. I'm getting distracted here. Go. Certainly that explains why there's also the gaps at the bottom once I blocked all of those ads.
Impressive.
There we go. Well, that cleans up Gamasutra. Well, there we go. I will take that reward by just irritating the character, irritating the player. How did I jump like 3 levels on the battle pass? Let's see. Moving on. Gamasutra has an article. Bad Robot Games raises $40 million to ramp up internal development. Bad Robot being the company that a long time ago made Buffy the Vampire Slayer and several other TV shows, Joss Whedon shows. Although, since people don't really, there was that cancel effort somewhat around Joss Whedon. I don't know if anybody really wants to do too much work around around that production company, although I guess probably people don't really care either if you're working with Bad Robot Games, which is a subsidiary. There is certainly a lot of logic around the idea of, hey, let's bring Buffy the Vampire Slayer back in video game form. You don't have to have any of the actors or actresses voice act any of the characters. You could get in new voice actors. You could retell all the events of Buffy and Angel and the comic book that continued Buffy. You could polish it up, since that was definitely a Monster of the Week series of particularly in the first couple seasons of Buffy. So you could polish that up and make a better story and relive all the hits. Even if it was just a beat 'em up game like the Simpsons arcade game, that would be fine too. We, for a brief moment there, looked like we were going to have a season of The Witch, as it were, with the Masquerade Bloodlines sequel coming out, although I'm not sure that really was going to work now. Plus there's also a couple other vampire games that could come out. We don't need a whole bunch of vampire games. So here it says, well, first internally developed AAA game from the first internally developed AAA game from Bad Robot Games is still under wraps. The company explains it and all other Bad Robot game creations will be developed in collaboration with Bad Robot Films, TV, and animation departments, as well as tap into Bad Robot's network of artists and creatives. Which, I mean, suppose proper journalism here says I need to investigate as far as what they are working on.
Angels don't miss.
That.
Time to dance.
Hit that. And hit that. So let's see what Bad Robot's got as far as Bad Robot Productions. Yeah. I may be thinking of the completely wrong people, actually, come to think of it. Yeah, I am. Bad Robot didn't make Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, I will stand by the fact that it is crazy that there isn't a Buffy Vampire Slayer game with Joss Whedon. But, like, I don't know what that company is called. I think it's like Living Dead or Zombie or something. Bad Robot instead is the J.J. Abrams production company who worked on things like Alias, which was popular, but you know, there's a lot of TV shows that just don't get any re-airing. Like, they seemed like they would have had enough episodes to be syndicated, but you just don't see them. Messed, failed terribly. A Fringe video game series would work fairly interestingly. Person of interest is no interest to me. Revolution, there was a video game based around that, I believe. And it succeeded somewhat and then kind of failed. And then Westworld, and I could imagine there being a Westworld game. They also did, as far as movies, Cloverfield, which you could probably not have a game around that. These Star Trek reboots, which nobody's doing anything with. Super 8, some more Star Trek. Some Mission Impossible games, which it's actually a little surprising that there aren't Mission Impossible games. And then Star Wars games, Star Wars Episodes 7 and 9, which, interesting thought there that maybe Bad Robot themselves is making a Star Wars game. And then Overlord, which is not to be confused with the video game called Overlord, the movie Overlord. Let's see. They wanted to make a film based on Half-Life and Portal, according to Wikipedia. Let's see.
This bears further study.
Let's see. Team Fortress. They made a Team Fortress 2 section called Pastime. Game mode. See, what's funny is they also worked with Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers just got moved around. And then they formed a spin-off venture with Tencent. Clearly J.J. Abrams has a slight interest in making video game stuff, or Bad Robot as production company has a slight interest in making video games, but clearly it's not their main focus. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure where all this is going. And I suppose we won't know until we know. Let's see if I can. Fee production company.
The future is only the beginning.
Yeah. The Josh Whedon production company is called Mutant Enemy, not Bad Robot. That's why I was confused. Let's see. They worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's kind of crazy that they haven't done anything lately around that. Yeah, you could easily make a video game based on Buffy. You wouldn't have to do much writing at all. Same is true for Angel, same is true for Firefly. Each of these, if they were single A or double A small budget efforts, that would be great. I don't think you could do anything with Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog other than suggest watching it. I didn't realize they had made a season 8 motion comic. And then Comic-Con episode 4, A Fan's Hope documentary. I didn't realize they made that. Then they made Cabin in the Woods, which you could easily make some kind of multiplayer game around that. And then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then their most recent thing is a game called The Nevers, or a TV series called The Nevers. See what The Nevers is about. Hit that one. And that one.
This is my fate after all.
Hey, check this
Well,
out.
here.
Have one last farewell. How did I miss that?
Premiered on April 11th, 2021. The season will consist of 12 episodes. It's currently airing on HBO. The Nevers is described as an epic sci-fi fiction, science fiction drama about a gang of Victorian women and men who find themselves with unusual abilities, relentless enemies, and a mission that might change the world. Oh yeah, I saw a trailer for that. That looked very interesting. It's HBO only, and that's why I haven't seen anything more of it. I imagine the Nevers is an attempt to do something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer without having the elements of it being around teenagers and in modern time. And I imagine they probably will try to play it coy and not call the Nevers witches and wizards immediately. There's a Netflix trailer for a comic book adaptation called Sweet Tooth, which I recognize the name of that comic. I think it was well received. Arguably, I don't know how much anything is well received in comics, but yeah, it definitely looks like it could be a wild story. Children that are half human, half animals, and the main character having deer horns on his head, and a child actor, which honestly, a child actor is as much of a problem as a character with deer horns on their heads. Back to video games though. Gamatsu has the B Project Ruusei Fantasia launching September 9th in Japan for smartphone and Switch. It's a boys virtual idol visual novel from the looks of it.
This is my home. You are my food.
Gamatsu has Sludge Life for Switch and Steam launching June 2. Stroll through a polluted island full of cranky idiots. See how this actually looks. Well, it doesn't look particularly well animated. Looks too low resolution. And there's just this whole world. Yeah, I'm just not sure. I think there's a real game here worth playing. That does not look pretty, to say the least. Not that every game has to look pretty, but it's a more difficult sell to me if it doesn't.
Juicy.
See, Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1694. Let's see, new Pokemon Switch was given 34 out of 40. Resident Evil Village was given 38 out of 40, so almost a perfect scores. And I did not realize Resident Evil Village was so well received. Tentai Bokumetsu was given a 31 out of 40, and World's End Club for Switch lands 31 out of 40. So yeah, they really like Resident Evil Village. Pokemon Snap, yeah, it sounds like it's a fine game. That would be pretty much all I think you can and should say about it. Is it sounds like it's a fine game. I don't think it's going much further in any other direction. I would totally play Pokemon Snap if I could have access to it cheaply, but I don't also foresee myself wanting to purchase an expensive Switch and then having to purchase a whole bunch of expensive games on top of it to just kind of burn through them very quickly.
Protect my creation.
Let's go and evolve here.
Beauty must be preserved. No interruption.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Angels don't
Yeah,
mix.
almost ended the turn
Seriously?
way too early there. Gametsu has an article. Demon Gaze Extra has been announced for the PS4 and Switch, which is tagged as an RPG game, I guess. I guess that's what this is. Seems like you have eye powers. Everybody's eyes are very focused on in the animation. It's an enhanced version of a 2013 released dungeon RPG. I'm not sure it ever came to the West. What does this do? Can I live with 6 health?
Stay beautiful. Dream for
We'll see.
eternity.
Let's see. Gametsu has Capcom sales update. Monster Hunter World Iceborne at 7.7 million and Resident Evil 7 Biohazard at 9 million. Let's see. What else have we got? Monster Hunter World regular is at 17.1 million. That is really high numbers. They're selling like 500,000 since the start of the year. RE3 is up to 4 million. RE2 is up to 8.1 million. I don't feel like RE3 was served well by being rushed out like this. Street Fighter V has sold 5.5 million. Devil May Cry has sold 4.3 million, and I suspect there's more numbers here if you're actually interested. As far as there are 104 games that they've ever released that have sold over 1 million. Some of these, like Mega Man 3, probably was super popular when it came out, sold only 101 million. So if Mega Man 3 in 1990 sold 1 million, and now Monster Hunter World in 2018 is selling 17 million, that means we're roughly getting 500,000 new players, new people to playing video games every year. Which, if you take that general assumption and guess, and then see that that same additional 500,000 every year bought Monster Hunter World Iceborne and Resident Evil 7
Underestimate me.
since the beginning of this year, that highlights that the new players coming to the world of being gamers also are spending money. So even in the middle of a pandemic, spending some money, probably not as much. Moving on, Gametsu has an article here. Cygames, makers of Shadowverse, I should mention, have announced Project GAMM, a fantasy action game for console directed and produced by Kenshiro Takaki. I don't know who that is, though. He is the creator of Senran Kagura, which arguably points out that Senran Kagura is probably dead at this point as a series. There had been certainly questions about whether Senran Kagura could last with Sony censorship that were coming directly from the creator of Senran Kagura. Let's see. General expectations. You can fight in flashing and exciting player versus player action battles. The game will be a world of magic and machines, and the machines are powered by magic. The protagonist may be a young mage, which I assume means male. And there is also a maid, a robot, and a knight. Almost everyone is playable and plays a center role. Multiplayer is at the core of the game. That does not seem anywhere similar to Senran Kagura with the ninja girls. But the devil certainly is in the details for anything. Like, it may be very well that he's tired of doing Senran Kagura style games and he wants to go in a different direction. It may very well be that he's being forced to go in a different direction due to factors outside his control, and he would like to do more Senran Kagura things. Moving on, since that will only lead to more speculation. Grisaia Phantom Trigger 6 is coming to Switch this summer. I believe this is a visual novel series. Yep. There's a lot of announcements that don't even bother to have a video, which that kind of makes for some dull content. Gametsu has the Deathloop hands-off previews, gameplay, and screenshots. So hands-off previews meaning that everything's scripted and pre-rendered, more than likely. And somebody just has a controller in their hand pretending like they're controlling the game. Yep. Mostly it looks like this video is just two people talking about the game. There's really not a lot I'm seeing as far as this game Deathloop right now. Like, it could be great, it could be nothing. The general concept almost makes more sense as a TV movie or even like a book. The idea of being trapped in this death loop and trying to escape. To make it a video game, you have to put in the actual encounters, and until somebody can actually get some hands-on demos of the encounters and say it's really, really polished or it's not polished at all, that's where when the water's gonna hit the road, the metal's gonna hit the road, the rubber's gonna hit the road. Yeah, it's the rubber's gonna hit the road.
Justice himself is speaking.
Moving on. Warhammer Age of Sigmar's Stormguard to feature full crossplay. Which, okay. I'm sure that makes Warhammer fans happy. Here we have a game on Steam called Disc Golf Valley VR, which doesn't look too bad. Early access, I don't know why it's in early access. This is really the kind of game that should just be done. $19.99. Not incredibly expensive for a VR game. 14 courses, maybe a little low there. Wouldn't you want at least 18 holes, as it were, but whatever. You could very, very much asset flip several different environments for a game like this, and that'd be fairly simple to do. I'm gonna put this on the fall list and see how people review it. Playing disc golf in VR does make a lot of sense. Let's see if this works.
I am the thunder of war incarnate.
Yeah, this would do 2 damage.
See you around, Slick.
Hey, check this out! I'm gonna eat till I burst!
There we go. Here we have a game called Bopio, which looks like a base building game of no real interest. Early access, $8.49, English only. Here we have a game on Steam called Stream Skate, which looks like you're skating. In theory, a really well polished skating game might interest me, but I don't want neon colors and bears showing up for kind of no reason. Like if you made a Mirror's Edge game or a Mirror's Edge mod where you were skating, that wouldn't be too much different than running. This is free, English only. This is a student project, and yeah, I'm just going to be a lot more picky going forward as far as which student projects to highlight and which ones to not bother with.
It's mania time!
Light 'em up!
Here we have a game on Steam called Task, which looks like a dark screenshot, single perspective, single screen type game. $4.99. Nothing there of interest. Let's see, here we have a game called Rising Hell, which, what kind of game is this? Action roguelike, where you're jumping up and up and up. Yeah, I feel like this is probably one of those frustration platformers where you're gonna suffer and die a lot and just constantly have to platform up. Feels like lava is going to be filling up slowly, always pushing forward. And the ability to freeze time is not a terrible thought.
You've won this one.
Yeah. It is rated very positively though, so it could be wrong. There could be no lava. You could kind of take up your own time. It doesn't look like there's that many frustrating buzzsaws. $8.99 English, allegedly full audio in Chinese. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. We'll see if we can get some more reviews. Like vertical platformer roguelite is an interesting thought as an experiment at the very least. I convinced another person to concede, which gives me another undeserved victory. Let's see. Kimetsu has Blaster Master 03 details with opening sequence and characters, which is very 90s anime with the characters. Here we have one with a significant amount of cleavage that kind of converts into underboob because she has this upper coat that doesn't really work as a coat. See. Probably want that. Probably don't want that. Get rid of that one too. Here we have a game on Steam called Lover O Wind. Just tagged as a walking simulator. A very short experience about the wind of spring. Yeah, I don't think I can believe that there's an actual story here and that this isn't just an asset flip game. I think that's too generic and too simplistic a concept. $8.89 English only. Let's not put that on the follow list. Next we have a game called Royal Revolt 2, which is tagged as an action RPG, MMO RPG. I thought it was more of a tower defense game, but on looking at these screenshots, it seems like it is more of a mobile phone action RPG Diablo clone. Free to play with in-app purchases and MMO only. So, not enough there to interest me. I think we already talked about this. The Falconeer Warrior Edition coming to the PS5, PS4, and Switch on August 5th. You're actually going to be able to see some gameplay of this. Yeah, I don't think I've seen this game before. This looks like a Panzer Dragoon clone type game, and we certainly don't see a lot of those.
I'm powerless for now.
Oh yeah, the Falconer does look interesting. Here we have Power Wash Simulator, which I have to question, like, whether you would really want to do a chore in video game form. Although, in all fairness, people who like the Reddit group of power wash porn probably don't get as many opportunities to use a power wash anyways, so there might be a thought to this. And honestly, you might be able to make a game around the idea of just cleaning things around the house, just kind of a relaxing thing. It's early access, $17.99. That seems a little expensive, but I'm gonna put this on the follow list. There might be a thought there. I just don't think I ever need to play that. Let's just go ahead and play that too.
Show you something nice.
Let's see. Gematsu has a game called Rustler launching August 31st on PC, PS4, 5, Switch, Xbox One, and Series. We have a trailer as far as what kind of game it is. I don't think that there's a real game here. I think there's general mini games and concepts and at most, and all from a top-down perspective. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is a joke game, if anything. Let's see. Well, and evolve. And hit.
I can't suppress this craving.
Playtime's over.
My reign is supreme. You'll learn true misery.
I did want to mention Tales, Screen 7, the publisher of the Cat Lady, Downfall of Lorelei, and several other games, have now all updated to use the Steam cloud save. And sometimes they give out codes to their games. Yeah, and NVIDIA GeForce Now, which are very separate things, certainly. But it is an interesting indication that there is room for success. Let's see. kill somebody.
I am the thunder of war incarnate, your true misery. Light 'em up. For me.
Let's just go ahead and play that. But yeah, it doesn't seem like setting up Steam cloud saves is probably that hard. It's probably something as simple as just clicking a switch or changing a single line of code. Where NVIDIA GeForce Now might also be fairly easy to set up. Here we have E3 saying the ESA and International Game Developers Association, or the IGDA, partnered to highlight indie developers at E3 of 2021, which is to say, I think there was an E3 equivalent that the IGDA was doing before, and now we've got kind of a merger of this. And see, I usually don't get news from E3, but I suspect we may be getting news from E3 more often these days. So if I do this and this.
So delightful.
Is this really my end?
I can win. Yep. So yeah, I think we'll have to move forward, assuming that we'll get more E3 bits of news.
I did it! I won!
There we go. Somehow I have a 2-match streak. There's no justifying that at all. I definitely don't deserve that. So at this point we're looking for one more Bloodcraft, and then I could potentially jump over to unranked and try and get some faster victories on some other style of gameplay. We could go back to Forestcraft or just bounce around. Here's a article from Gamasutra, how game designers handle the burden of encumbrance. Limiting frustration is a category here. Certainly that can be frustrating to be over encumbered and have to walk slower. I think Death Stranding is all about being over encumbered though, so I think that is kind of an exception of a style of game. Whereas many games have weight loads or carry loads, and there's just not really a good reason for those systems to even exist. It's just artificial artificial realisticness when that's not really necessary. Interesting. Like somebody linked from Devolver Digital, I assume, to a review on their game Essays on Empathy, and it links to this website I've never heard of that's not even HTTPS, called digitallydownloaded.net, and immediately there's just a ton of ads, which that's not super surprising, but there is a mascot character named DD, DEE space DEE, who's like an anime girl in a bikini. And so all of a sudden you're getting kind of slightly not safe for work ads when you just click on a review, and then more ads and more ads. There's like 100 canonical games 1 through 10 all the way up to 100, just all throughout the sidebar, which that's just a nightmare scenario, frankly, is to potentially have a list of 100 games and try and go that direction. They have a podcast too.
I'm powerless for now.
I'm certainly questioning whether I should even be trying to listen to half as many of the video game podcasts that I'm still listening to. Actually, I don't think I'm listening to any video game podcasts. I'm listening to all kinds of other podcasts instead.
Take a seat.
But I'm also not really listening to a lot of them. I start them, get busy, get distracted, and then only hear the beginning or end of them,
It's only the beginning.
which is fine. They are just there, I think, more for background noise than anything else.
This is my fate after all.
Moving on, Take Raptor has the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD review. And on top of the review for this game, they also posted 3 or 4 different guides. This game looks old. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me also. But apparently 2 people who do understand it, they like it. At least Tech Raptor likes it. They gave it an 8.5. It says it draws players into an interesting world with deep combat and interesting monsters, while some aspects like late game combat do leave a bit to be desired. Let's see. Let's hit this.
The night will be stained in blood.
While some aspects like light game combat do leave a bit to be desired, even 18 years after Shin Megami Tensei 3 earns what praise it's been given. Pros are excellent world building, engaging combat in a labyrinth-like dungeons. Cons are Demi Fiend spectates too much, and it's easy to overpower the engaging combat. So it's supposed to be excellent world building, except Demi Fiend spectates too much, engaging combat, except it's easy to overpower.
Stay out of my axis reach.
Gematsu has Super Bomberman R Online, launching May 27th for the PS4, Switch, and PC, and later for the Xbox One. This is, I think, a game we've already seen. Yep. I don't know how many people are still interested in playing Bomberman games. Honestly, I don't know if people were ever interested in playing Bomberman games. They probably were fun for a year or two in arcades, and that's about it. And I imagine they had some slightly better sales in Japanese arcades.
Blood and pain awaken me.
And then I guess hit that one too.
Bathe in a massacre.
Let's see. Gematsu has the Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes teaser trailer, which is age restricted.
Blood is spilled.
So if I was to go click on watch on YouTube now, let's see.
Ready to
Are we
summon.
good? Yep, we can just show it. There's some adjustment I need to make here as far as if I'm gonna have to show more and more trailers directly on YouTube. Oh, I need to decide what components. I think the video analytics, for instance, can go away. I think a lot of this information at the bottom can go away. I think we can just center the image and show it off as something close to a full screen image, even if it is slightly to the left. As for what this trailer is really showing, yeah, it doesn't look particularly like it's revealing too much there.
You're a funny one.
Oh man, I should have done that.
Hey, check this out.
Why the long phrase? Ha 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 ha! Tough crowd.
I just wrecked myself there.
Oh, I lost. You're tough.
Hide the playlist. Hide the live chat. Hide the comments. Hide the video info. Maybe we'll keep the video info. No, hide the video info too. Hide the video sidebar. Okay. Hide the description. Not so much. There we go. So, yeah, I think this works better. Certainly. I think this works very, very, very much better as a way to show videos. I could get rid of the text at the bottom, but I feel like that helps. Could try to zoom this in a little bit more. And I don't know if I really want this ad block. Ad block for YouTube. Maybe we'll see if there's an option there to fix that. See if there's a zoom in more. Zoom in more. Yeah, I think that works very nicely. And I'll just have to see if we can get this one bit of text to disappear. Of course, I could just go full screen, but full screen actually wouldn't even really work. And looking at this, I don't think I can roll up the screen some more. So you would probably want to stretch this a little bit further up and make the video in the top right even smaller, and frankly that's not probably the right way to go. Let's see. Options.
Time to get started. I guess you're looking for a fight.
See if we have the ad block for YouTube disabled. I may not even need that ad block because I may literally have a whole second ad block enabled. Yeah, may very well be the case. Yep. That may have just been an extension that worked before, and isn't needed now. Alright, well that works fairly well. Now. Okay. So going forward, we probably will have to make more use of that concept. Of course, I suppose there is some weirdness in like a Steam page that has the video here on the side and fairly small, and then a YouTube video being more centered. Here we have a game called VR Prison Escape, which obviously is just a low effort, nothing game. $1.19 for a VR game, bunch of languages, that's way too cheap. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Cosmologica Guide to Space, which looks, it's tagged as a word game, but it looks like you're kind of dragging and dropping images and playing kind of like a match game. Like, can you match a mission with a year with a lunar lander or with a lander? $1.39, English only. There might be something educational around this, maybe. Or it could just be absolutely nothing. TechRaptor has some bad news for Bitcoin miners. NVIDIA has halved the hash rate on all RTX 3000 series graphics cards going forward. Now, I imagine this is only going to affect newly manufactured graphics card. And they tried this before on the RTX 360, and it failed because they accidentally unlocked it. Certainly, I guess this might mean that if you have a current 3080, it might be as smart, as crazy as it may sound, it may be smart to sell a current 3080, buy a new 3080 from the profits of selling a current 3080, and make some money in the difference. Although I suspect that's not the case, because Ethereum mining and Bitcoin mining and all of that is kind of long since stopped being successful on even the top of the line graphics cards. So I suspect that having the hash rate has a lot more to do with just trying to deter people that don't realize that buying graphics card is not a good concept in the first place. It's kind of trying to put the cat back in the bag, and that never works.
I'm out of cash.
Arguably, I'm assuming that NVIDIA is claiming that having the hash rate won't really affect other kinds of usages, and that it isn't going to all of a sudden slow down video games rendering graphics, or it probably will slow down trying to crack hashes on passwords, because that would be the same cryptology. And then arguably maybe these features should have never been in the graphics cards in the first place. That is another factor to certainly consider, is that
So delightful.
that they should have been smarter
Bloody climax.
and never introduced such capabilities to the public. Moving on, Gematsu has the Summer Games Fest 2021 beginning June 10th with a showcase event. This is going to include 2K, Activision, and a bunch of other companies. You can just read their names here, including Steam.
All define a brighter future for
I would
everyone.
almost have assumed that the Summer's Games Fest was just a Steam sale because there's so many Steam sales.
You're done for.
One of those trailers was that
My three-sided defense will repel all.
that game. I haven't seen anything from that game in a while. Some of these game trailers are for games that have already come out, and a few of these I don't immediately recognize. But yeah, you have like Genshin Impact games and several other kinds of games. This is kind of what I would like to see E3 be more about, is just more varieties on more different types of consoles, more different styles. It would be interesting, to say the least, if this is Prime Gaming is presenting it. Amazon Prime Gaming, that's weird. And it's hosted by Jeff Keighley. Okay. Well, we know who he is.
Drunken dream must end.
This is my fate after all.
It would be very interesting if the new E3 after a year off did kind of focus more on global games, more Eastern games, more European games. The ESRB being a lobbyist group for the United States companies has put it in a slight bent where the games getting presented, even though Sony was there, even those Sony presentations in the past were definitely centered around announcing things for the Western audience, with some notable exceptions of like Ghost of Tsushima, and I don't know of anything else really. Let's see. One damage to your leader. Vengeance.
I'm telling you, I'm a great performer.
Let's hit this and see if we can evolve.
Hey, check this out.
Sorry. Guns over. Light 'em up.
Hit that
A full frontal attack.
in the turn. Game of Sutra has an article here. Take-Two says the unexpected success of The Outer Worlds is now a long-term franchise. So this might be the first success story we've heard of a video game in quite a while, where they're willing to come out and say, hey, we're going to make it a long-term franchise, versus just saying we're going to allow a sequel to happen, which you could have easily just said there's going to be a sequel and not overcommitted, and maybe that's a mistake on Take-Two's part. Let's see. Gamatsu has an isekai dungeon RPG called Live in Dungeon for PC, launching June 5th, Japanese only. Let's see. Yeah, we saw the trailer for this on Steam. So, yeah. Being a Japanese language only game, I think I put it on the follow list, but also I kind of question whether there would be enough of a game here. You know, I want to get back into a rant about Psychonauts, but there literally was a level I did where you play basically as Godzilla and you're running around crashing and destroying everything in sight, and even that immediately became boring and grindy. just
I shall protect you.
that's not good, to say the least.
I'll show you something nice.
4 damage, need to kill something.
Blood
This
and
is my
pain
fate after
awaken me.
all.
Let's see. Gamatsu has Chivalry 2 crossplay open beta test set from May 27th to June 1st. Actually, I'm in a weird position where I'd kind of rather just stream a little bit longer instead of having to go back and potentially play more Psychonauts. But if I acted on that impulse, I would never finish Psychonauts and I'd just rage quit it. And there is a chance, certainly. It would be very weird to have to rage quit Psychonauts, because that's definitely not a game that people are going to respect to rage quit on. I would get a lot of flack, deservedly so. Let's see, Steam has a game here called EXO, which
All to find a brighter future for
looks like you're kind of
everyone.
flying around several different environments. I'm not sure if this is an actual game. It kind of looks just asset flippy. Early access 1999, third-party EULA, English allegedly full audio. Looking at this video, it seems like you're just kind of flying around, which isn't that exactly what the trailers for Anthem
Ow, I
were
lost.
promising, and they completely failed to deliver on. Yeah, I don't think there's a game there that needs to be followed. Here we have a game on Steam called SnowRunner, which seems to be an automobile sim from Focus Home Interactive. $29.99 with the premium edition bumping it up to $49.99. And then a season pass for year 1 and 2 immediately for $74.37. Getting that game to be particularly expensive. It's single player, but it also has online co-op. Honestly, personally, I just don't think I'd ever want to play a game where I'm driving a car as a job, so I'm just going to say no to this. And frankly, there's a good chance that there's 5 or 6 games on my fall list or wish list that are very similar to that concept that need to be removed now in retrospect. Here we have a game on Steam called Seiken Manifestia, which looks like they're calling it a real-time strategy game. It looks like a cell phone game that's been ported. It looks like a gacha game where you have a lot of in-app purchases. $3.99. I mean, sorry, $39.99. Man, I'm getting bad at reading prices. Japanese only. Oddly, no in-app purchases. That's weird, because you see there's like 2 currencies here. So they must have abandoned this on mobile and are just selling a, one would hope, complete product on Steam instead. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam that's just all Asian characters, and it looks like a real-time strategy feudal Chinese game. Free to play MMO single player, Chinese only, allegedly Chinese full audio. Let's see, we already talked about that. Gamatsu has the Legend of Heroes Ao no Kisekai PC fan translation mod launching May 22nd. Somebody has literally made a trailer for a fan mod, which for the Legend of Heroes series, I guess that means there's enough of a fandom out there to justify doing something like that. played out of order there. That I could have done better. So this is what the mod looks like, which it does look like it's polished. I don't know why it's so zoomed in on this Gemetsu article. Seems like there's a lot of different gameplay styles in this series. A little mini games.
Oh, ouch!
Oh, why is that so zoomed in? Can't get it to, I can't get it to size right. Like theoretically I'd want it like this, but then you just have a bunch of white space on the side. Well, I'll have to play with that some more. See if I can get it to work or not. A lot of that just has to do with the way things are programmed.
The night will be stained in blood.
Time to dance!
There we go. Let's see. Sinran Nin Ninja Taizen Neptune Sojo Taichi no Kyoin adds a female Go the Crow from Shinobido Way of the Ninja. I believe this might be. Oh, I almost don't want to show this just to be safe, but yeah, this might be the Sinran Kagura Ninja Ninja Girl combo games. Neptunia / Sinran Kagura crossover game, which I guess that does mean as long as this game is still coming out that there is something with the Sinran Kagura series that's still being worked on. Even though the original creator seems to not be working on it. Let's see. See, what can we do? Get this.
Beautiful. Dream for eternity.
And then evolve, I guess.
Go! Want to know? Endure. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm out of cash.
Let's see, next we have a game called The Ascent, launching July 29th for PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. A cyberpunk action RPG. It's also available on Xbox Game Pass. Let's see what this looks like. Yep, this doesn't look like much more than a top-down twin-stick shooter. It looks nicely polished, but it's not particularly attractive to me. Here we have a game on Steam called Faraway Quealia, which looks kind of like a mobile phone game RPG. Not as bad as an RPG Maker game, but I'm not sure that there's much here that's that different. It's $22.49 English and Japanese. I guess just for safety's sake I can put this on the follow list, but I'd almost assume not to bother. Yeah. This is not from a developer I recognize. it's not a series I recognize, so if it is some new beginning of a series of a hidden gem series, then it'll be probably years before people realize whether it's good or not. Here we have Days Gone, which is rated very positively. Do you have to play this? Yeah, it's single player only
Time to get started.
for $49.99.
Ignorance will be swept away.
Yep,
Beat
as an
it,
open
small
world
fry.
post-apocalyptic zombie game with rated M for mature. Yeah, the screenshots aren't loading. Yeah. It just takes forever for those screenshots to load. From what I recall, Days Gone as a game was fine, but oddly, kind of doesn't get any better than like Dead Island, and I think it's more relevant perhaps to talk about Dead Island than it is to talk about Days Gone, and certainly it's nowhere as good as Dying Light, and there may just be a saturation point of zombie games. And since this one didn't blow anybody's socks off, this is published by PlayStation Mobile on Steam, which is interesting. Which there's, I suppose, a few games here getting published on Steam. Why did I choose not to have this on the wish list? I don't know. That should be on the wish list. I don't want to pay more than $4.99 for it when it's on sale, but yeah, we very well may be in a point where there's a saturation of zombie games and there's just not enough room for any more. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Misdirector, which is tagged as a horror 2D noir historical game. I don't know if I trust that this is actually a horror game or if this is just straight up someone trying to get as many tags on their game as possible. It, to me, just looks like a RPG Maker game. And I just don't think that there's anything here. $4.99 English only. Is it okay to say it's available on itch.io on Steam? I bet it is. Wouldn't be surprised if Steam doesn't have those kind of draconian rules. Because, well, frankly, because Steam probably doesn't care and doesn't want to get sued for being a monopoly. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Space Porter, which looks just like a Sokoban box puzzle pushing game for $5.99, English and Russian, nothing there of interest. Next we have a game called Dominant Mind, or more commonly known as Mastermind. I have been looking for a decent version of this on Steam. Something that could be fairly cheap too. $3.99 is probably still a little too expensive, but I will put this on the follow list. Of course, that also gets back to the idea of Tabletop Simulator. Like, you probably could just play Mastermind with Tabletop Simulator anyways, and comparing this to Cluedo and Broken Sword Director's Cut are once again terrible comparisons. Don't make any sense.
I can devour your dreams. I'll show you something nice. Go! Go! Should I suffocate?
this. See, next we have a game on Steam called Endless Furry Killer Infinity, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter game, troll game, low-effort game. $1.19 English only. We have only about 10 more tabs. Here we have a game called Siege Survival Gloria Victis, which seems to be a resource management survival medieval game.
Now a nightmare begins.
I don't think this is the kind of game I'd want to play, but I might be willing to see if people like it. It's $19.99. It's got a bunch of languages.
Shame.
We'll put that on the follow list.
Activations set. Ready to summon.
I embrace all manner of spellcraft.
Next, we have a game called Seena, S-E-E-N-A, VR beta, which looks just like a first-person shooter VR game, and it's set in a military environment that doesn't interest me. Otherwise, it might make it to the follow list. Free to play is really cheap for a VR game. Single player with online co-op. I'd really have to question if we're anywhere close to having a online co-op type game.
Take my compensation up front.
That
This
could
bears
succeed.
further study.
Hey, check this out.
Your avarice, you're in my way. This bears further study.
Next, we have a game on Steam called How We Got Here, which looks like a pixely
Corpses come in every
game
shade
of some sort.
imaginable.
Seems simplistic though. Doesn't seem like it's much of anything.
Ready to summon.
It's free. Maybe it's a student project. Doesn't actually say that. English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, it looks like it's a fairly surreal game. So if this looks interesting to you, check it out, but I'm gonna skip it. See, Maid of Sker is coming to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series on May 26th alongside a first-person shooter challenge mode update. Do we have any trailer here? Yes, we do. Maid of Sker, I would have assumed was just a horror game without any first-person shooting. So it's very weird to now see, oh, this is a horror game where you can possibly have a challenge mode and shoot the monsters. You know, there's probably a decent number of horror games that if people put in the effort to make a arcade type mode, something where you could just burn through the tension, there might very well be like room for a relaxing arcade mode. Like I definitely wasn't super scared by Resident Evil 4, but I also enjoyed the fact that after playing Resident Evil a couple of times all the way through, it was nice to just be able to go into some different arcade modes and play for a little bit, although I really didn't do much in the Resident Evil 4 arcade mode content. Open Critic has an article here. Ramleith Valentine will have a new voice actress in Guilty Gear Survive. The way this is being spun by some people is that she is stepping down to let a person of color, a black lady, voice act a character that is tan, and I would assume that the Guilty Gear Strive developers would say is also black. See, here we have, to not to misconstrue it. She stated that since the character is black and she is not, that she would not accept the role. She stated that she does support more work for black actresses behind the mic. Which, okay. I mean, at a certain point, this is the, this would be the right way for equality to happen. I have to applaud Ramley, well, the previous voice actress, Erin Fitzgerald, for standing by her principle here and not just telling other people what to do. It seems silly at a certain level. There should be more work for all kinds of people in voice acting. I totally agree with that, but it also seems like it is really silly to say that a voice actor cannot voice a character of a different ethnicity. We've seen these same kind of extreme SJW ways of thinking to say that a white person can't write a black character in a story, which at a certain point you are limiting the creativity of artists. And that's what she's really doing here, is saying that I'm going to intentionally limit my own creativity as a person who has previously been successful at making my voice sound realistic for a black animated character. But yeah, that's a weird story, to say the least. It is, I think, also probably worth mentioning that this actress has played other characters in other roles of other ethnicities, and maybe they are going to stand behind that and give up all of those positions. So now Laura Stahl will be the voice actor. She's had roles in Hunter x Hunter, The Irregular at Magic High School. Yeah. Weird, but almost like a personal decision. And I can't really complain about somebody making a personal decision, but often what this really comes down to is it's actually one person falling on the sword to establish a precedent to then claim everybody should do it. I would totally side with the exact opposite story if the original voice actor said, I'm not giving up this position because I need the work and because I do a good job voicing this character. The idea of creative segregation, which is probably a phrase that should be used more, is not a good one, frankly, because it will eventually have to go the opposite way for it to stand up to any scrutiny. And at that point, that would say for every single Japanese made game where the characters are Japanese, to stand up to scrutiny, every single one of those voice actors, who are usually white people now, would have to lose their job for basically non-existent Japanese voice actors in America that speak English fluently. And honestly, I think if you survey the vast majority of Japanese immigrants who have come from, like, whether they're first generation or second generation immigrants who have come from Japan, I doubt very many of them in America want to be voice actors. Very few wanted to be voice actors even in Japan because of the kind of low pay for it, and it's just not that ambitious. If you had struggled to get a visa and to become a US citizen just to do a job you didn't really want to do in your own country, it's just ridiculous. I'm sure there's a few people that want to do that, but not a lot. moving on as far as stories. TechRaptor has an article that Ubisoft reportedly hasn't done much about its toxic workplace culture, which the problem with this article and the way it's headlined is Ubisoft, I think, is pretty much maintained they don't have a toxic workplace culture. It's been some disgruntled employees and some French press, French journalism, who have been pushing the idea that they have a toxic workplace culture. And certainly if they did have one, almost certainly they would say the same thing, and so it may very well be that they did. But there's really no reason for them to change how they do their business just because they're being lied about. And literally, I believe there's liable lawsuits in the process as far as Ubisoft against these newspaper French press. And it wouldn't be the first time that the French press has printed false or sensationalized journalism. It's a broad stroke, certainly, to say that for all French press, but it's not uncommon for any news source to propagandize and use yellow journalism. So whether or not Ubisoft does have a toxic workplace culture, they're denying it. So why would they change anything at all? There have been, let's see, there have been some people who have left the company not wanting to deal with the mess, and so that might be a point in the column of there being in a toxic workplace environment, but it also might be a point to say that they've just left the company because so many accusations are now swirling around the company they work at. They don't want the bad press on their own portfolio, their own resume. And I think the truth is probably halfway in the middle. There probably is a little bit of both. Here, the French union tried to sue them and failed, and this is not being pointed out. They tried to sue him for harassment and discrimination. And then, of course, this whole thing comes around just like French people are jerks. That is the standard cliche anyways, is that French people are rude. So them being rude to themselves is not super surprising. But at a certain point, I don't know what you can do to fix a toxic workplace culture anyways, because you either fire everybody or you retrain everybody, and if you retrain everybody, then the accusation is that you're not really doing anything is immediately going to come back up. So yeah, either you shut down, like frankly, once people start attacking a company, you probably just shut it down. You just say, forget it, you're all fired. And we've seen that with other companies, at least one other company where the employees were not happy with the owner and the owner just fired everybody. And I bet the owner is very happy with that decision compared to months and months, if not years and years, of continued accusations and continued frustrations that he probably did not want to deal with. Moving on, Gematsu has a GTA Grand Theft Auto 5 and GTA Auto Online for PS5 and Xbox Series launching November 11th. The problem, I think, that's the biggest issue with saying that Ubisoft has a toxic workplace culture is Ubisoft has succeeded in a lot of ways to make a lot of products come out and a lot of good games come out. So how toxic really is it? If you took the actual word toxic, like you're being poisoned, you're dying, you're not being able to breathe or function as normal. Maybe all jobs are toxic. I think a lot of people would probably claim that most jobs are toxic, certainly. But on the scale, how is Ubisoft creating so many games and that are good at this? If you told me, on the other hand, that some of the low effort garbage game creators on Steam had toxic workplace environments, that would make a lot more sense. I'd be like, well, no, duh. Obviously, that explains why this game is broken and there's no voice acting and why the animation looks like garbage and is done in MS Paint. But yeah, when you're finishing a product, and I guess this is the Gordon Ramsay argument, but at a certain point, Gordon Ramsay may scream at a lot of people, and a lot of that is played up for TV, certainly, but he also makes some of the best food you can get. So yeah, maybe some people just need to be screamed at. Some people just don't listen. Some people never learn. Some people do need to just be fired. But yeah, I don't see Ubisoft changing their tune or based on stories or allegations. Jason Schreier of, I believe, what is he now working for? He's working for like a New York Times or something. Has put out a new book, and I'm not promoting the book in any ways. I, in fact, think it's probably unethical and weird for a video game journalist to put out a book that is a historical book about video games. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. It's weird. It's real weird. You put out books maybe when you're retired and not still working in the industry. You don't put out books in the middle of it. It's weird to put out a book in general, but these days, but yeah. I will applaud so far. I have not heard Giant Bomb or any other mainstream video game journalist just promote his book severely, which I could have definitely seen more of that, where they would have just constantly tried to get people to read the book and buy the book. Honestly, almost all the video game history books are pretty bad. Like, you read Game Over, the latest version of Game Over, and you pretty much know all the history you need to know of old video games. You could probably just read the history of like Atari on Wikipedia and Nintendo and Sega on Wikipedia, and you'd have as much information as you really need to know as far as history around video games. And that is kind of ancient history, 70s and 80s stuff that really has nothing to do with what's been happening in the past 10 years. Like the whole saga of the Dreamcast, completely irrelevant these days. Or almost completely irrelevant. It means nothing to a new kid that's playing games on their Switch and has only heard of Nintendo and Microsoft. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Outbreak Endless Nightmares, which looks like it might be a decent survivor game. There's a little bit of visual polish on it. There's a lot of dark screenshots also. It is single player, shared split screen, English only, $14.99. I'm going to put this on the follow list and see how that goes. And with that is all the tabs I had open to start with, so now I'll just go down my Twitter feed and then we'll call it a day. See if there's any big news. What we're not doing here is doing any follow list cleanup. Here, Double Fine has got an exclusive for Psychonauts 2 new psi powers. So yeah, seems like this is probably going to be a new character. This whole, for lack of a better term, CGI Muppet character design is weird. Yeah, I was playing Psychonauts 1, trying to work up to playing Psychonauts 2 when it finally would have come out, and in a funny way, I think there's a decent chance that by the time I'm done playing Psychonauts 1, I will be uninterested in playing Psychonauts 2. That I'm being anti-sold on it, apparently, at the moment. There's still time, I imagine, and that's kind of the problem, is there's too much time, but there's still enough time to turn me around, and if the second half of the game is really good, or if they introduce some abilities that make it really, really easier. Something with like infinite lives would be nice. That's interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. Although I shouldn't just say something's interesting and say we'll talk about it in a second. There's an Addams Family game apparently in the development, and it's animated in kind of a unique way that I would not have really expected. Let's see. Still just scrolling down my Twitter feed. Of course, the problem here is Twitter's still broken for me, and it's probably just going to be broken forever. PickRaptor here has decided to go the same route as IGN, so it would be interesting to see what happens here, where they've posted a post saying support Palestine, which, okay. In all fairness, outside of the United States, I think there's pretty much, outside of the United States and Israel, I think there's pretty much very few people who are against supporting Palestine. But in the United States, there's a significant percentage of fundamentalist Protestant Christians, and maybe even some Catholics who support Israel in everything they do, no matter what they do. I imagine there's also a lot of Jews in the United States that also support Israel. That would certainly make a lot of sense. But yeah, I don't want to dive too deep into political conflicts on a video game site. Particularly since talking about it or even thinking about it is not any real actionable action. Suppose there are some charities out there that you might be able to donate some money to support people, but also say there is massive amounts of money being funded to Israel and Palestine from government agencies, which are going to swing the balance a lot more than a few dollars here or there from individuals. And everybody everywhere has problems at home they need to work on too. It is also very much just walking on eggshells, talking about the Middle East ever. Scrolling down, I think I've seen everything new on one Twitter feed. It's funny, I was kind of interested in that Mario golf game, and then less than 2 days later, I've kind of completely forgotten about it. Which, in all fairness, that probably is exactly how that experience would go normally. Is if I were to buy Mario Golf, I'd be excited about it for a week or two, and then immediately forget about it and move on to the next thing. That's why it's fairly important for me to get games cheap on Steam instead of paying full price, because it is very, very possible that one will lose interest in the game, and we don't want to overinvest in it. I'm just going to mention that TechRaptor has an article saying Marvel's Avengers has added Red Room takeover events along with a bunch of improvements, because I don't care about Marvel Avengers. I don't think most people care about Marvel Avengers. Alright, one more tab. I'm kind of curating some of these games that came out while we were streaming too. Right. Here we have a TechRaptor article, Van Ritten's Guide to Ravenloft DM Tips. Is this a tabletop game? Yes, this is. That explains why I don't recognize it. Yeah, well, that was stupid. Let's see, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance Switch release date has been announced. What day is it coming out? May 7th. Okay. This isn't a tabletop review. Wow. Got a whole bunch of tabletop things. Here we have a game on Steam called Aerial Knights Never Yield. Did we already talk about this game? Feel like I saw something kind of like this, but something slightly different from this too. Well, I'll put it on the follow list. It's a weird looking game to say the least. English full audio. I'm not sure if it has really partial controller support. Don't like the sound of that. But yeah, I want to see some reviews on that one. Here we have one called Crowdful Planning, which looks like nothing. It's $7.99 English only. Here we have War Mines World War II, WW2. Which looks like it's just mines, the game Mines. Different layouts and more of a concept, more of a story around mines for $2.09 is not terrible as a thought. English full audio. Put that on the follow list and see if people like it. I bet people don't ever play it. Next we have a game on Steam called Swarming Planet, which looks like nothing for $9.99. Next we have a game called Fight for the Ball, which looks like nothing for $9.99, English, German, and Spanish. Here we have Vampire Dawn 3, The Crimson Realm, which is tagged as an RPG, JRPG game. And being the third game in a series, this is really easy to check out because all we have to do is see if we can find a Vampire Dawn 2 or 1. Although I guess it doesn't matter because English language is not supported. Anyways, well, it's coming out June 2021. Well, regardless, we can just look at the developer and see if Vampire Dawn 1 and 2 are on Steam. Seems like they aren't. Yep, this just looks like an RPG Maker game and it doesn't have the 2 sequels, so that's an easy no. Take Raptor has an article here. You can now pet the cat in Skyrim. Which, yay, was yeah, another Skyrim mod. Good for them. Let's see. OBS is testing version 27. A lot of new features. Undo, redo with Control Z for undo and Control Shift Z for redo or Control Y. Source transitions when hiding and unhiding sources. Track matte transitions, a new type of stinger transition that lets you show parts of both of the original scene and the destination scene in the same time during the transition. That's new. Improved display captures on Windows 10 version 19.03 Plus, which fixes the infamous black screen issue on laptops without requiring you to change your GPU that OBS is running on. A new missing files dialog to warn you when some of your sources are missing their underlying files, images, media sources, etc. Surface integrations and browser docs on Mac and Linux. Wayland support on Linux. I don't know what Wayland is. It must be some new graphics card or sound driver. Direct integration of NVIDIA broadcast noise removal on Windows, which I thought it already had that. Maybe that's a plugin. And then Super RGB color format support and much more. So that doesn't look like that's anything huge, but a track matte transition is something that would be interesting to play with, and undoing and redoing is something I certainly could benefit from. Source transitions when hiding and unhiding source would be interesting, depending on how that's implemented. Here we have a game on Steam called Dumbbots, which doesn't look like anything. $8.49. Seems like maybe it's a programming game where you program these low polygon characters. That still doesn't really interest me. Here we have a game called Clear World on Steam. Looks like a visual novel, but it's tagged as a word game. This may be a Chinese only game or Japanese only game. $26.99, Japanese full audio with Chinese. So yeah, there's not a lot one can do when it doesn't support your language. See, we have an article here from GameIndustry.biz, which interestingly looks very, very different than it normally does. Let's see. The ex-Monolith VP Kevin Stevens is starting a new EA studio. The studio head during the development of Shadow of Mordor franchise will lead a team making an open-world action-adventure games. This would all be WB, I would assume. It would have been involved in that, but maybe not. Maybe he moved over to EA. I don't think the WB merger would have affected Electronic Arts. No, he wouldn't. So he must have skipped ship previously. Let's see. Let's turn off the ad blocking and see what this looks like normally. Yeah, they've got this top banner aspect at the top as far as ads, and then it immediately goes, we care about your privacy, so we're gonna block you from reading what you want to read. Ryan declined to say whether the studio will work on original intellectual property or existing brands, but said EA is planning to talk a bit more about the studio this fall. Right, so let's go ahead and share this article. Nope. May not be able to grab that. I can definitely get rid of the social buttons. I can suppose I think that works. And then we can go ahead and grab this. We'll just get everything that says company and get rid of that. Then get rid of that. And then get rid of it again. There we go. And that should fix most of this article, most of it. Alright. Spending extra time showing off how I manipulate all these things. I was trying to hurry up here too. Let me see if this other game is YouTube family friendly. Yeah, I think it is. Here we have a game on Steam called Cute Girls Find Secrets. It's clearly spot the difference. Although this X and this X does not seem to really indicate a difference. I can see that this color and this gem and this gem is different. But yeah, it's just some pretty bad drawn girls. 59 cents, bunch of languages. Nothing there really to talk about. But it does highlight that Steam still seems cool with those type of games, at least for today. TechRaptor has the article, the Addams Family Mansion Mayhem arrives in fall of 2021. And yeah, there is, I think, a major benefit, particularly for the Addams Family, even more than the Munsters, to have them animated. But honestly, both the Munsters and the Addams Family are both cartoon characters these days for kids, so they both should probably be animated. But like Morticia Addams is supposed to be super paper thin, unnaturally thin, that you really can't get a human to be that shape. And the characters here, we can see Wednesday Addams has a huge stretched out head, and they're both incredibly pale, or they're all incredibly pale. This guy's pretty fat, although I feel like that's a weird choice because I never really felt like Gomez Addams was pretty fat. What kind of game is this, though? That's the question. Because, like, I'm just not sure what kind of gameplay you're really looking for. Yeah, it's a runaround platforming game. Yeah. This might be a fine game. I just don't see why you would use the Addams Family for something like that, for the theme. It seems kind of ridiculous. But once again, the Simpsons arcade game was just to beat them up. I would have been fine if they were just beating up things. Here we have a game on Steam called Knocked, NOCT, which looks like a horror first-person shooter, and maybe it's got enough polish here to be something actually worth looking at. Yeah, I think it deserves a chance. There's cutscenes being shown, actual gameplay. Giant spider woman. $7.79, English and Russian. Put that on the follow list. Take Raptor has that same article. Seattle's new EA studio is going to be headed by the ex-Monolith VP Kevin Stevens. I don't know why you're making a new studio in Seattle, but certainly that highlights a consistent problem in corporate environment culture, I suppose, for lack of a better term, is that there's hundreds and hundreds of square miles in the United States where you could build a new studio and it would be cheaper to live and cheaper to run. Every single bill, electricity, water, everything would be cheaper. You'd get a huge amount of tax subsidies. The only downside is if you built in the middle of the United States, you're going to have to drive a little bit further to a meeting. Or you're going to have to fly to meetings. But how many person-to-person, face-to-face meetings do you really need to have? It doesn't make sense to me nowadays, with now everybody knowing how Zoom works to at least some extent, to not have your offices run out of a much cheaper central United States area. I mean, it's not like you're forcing your employees to move to China and run their business out of China or anything like that, but that would be incredibly cheaper, certainly, but it's not. But yeah, they need to get away from New York. They need to get away from LA. Even if they just moved to cities that are slightly cheaper, if they move to Austin or Dallas or I imagine Chicago is a crazy suggestion, but that there are some places. The central hub of where Walmart is, where I used to remember, I think it's called Bentonville, maybe, like Arkansas, like places like that. Orlando, Florida, Oklahoma City. There's plenty of secondary places where you could have your offices. You could also easily build buildings out in the desert of Nevada and far away from Las Vegas and do fairly cheaply there. But yeah, I think the United States corporate structure particularly needs to become more migratory and more willing to move around. Although it seems like that just kind of never happens. Otherwise, you risk the problem of creating a Tokyo scenario where all business and all government business is done outside of, inside of Tokyo. Thus, almost everybody in Japan lives very close or lives in Tokyo. Whereas it would make a lot more sense to move it around. And Tokyo was the new capital, where Kyoto was the old capital, and that they were very successful in Japan from building up new infrastructure and building up a city out of nothing, basically, for Tokyo, it would make a lot of sense for Japan to do that again and have a Neo Tokyo, or just a new city called something else in a far distant area away from Tokyo, so that they can spread out their populace more. And it certainly would make a lot of sense for Washington, D.C. to be moved in part to a more central area of the United States for a lot of different reasons, weather reasons alone. But yeah, just establish a new District of Columbia, a different city, which generally I would assume would be Franklin, DC, just since the first city was named after Washington. Then you would just go with, I believe Franklin's the second president, so that would make a lot of sense. And you just building a new White House and a new Congress and a new Senate building and a new Pentagon, and you have huge investments in some central United States state, and that would help a lot of things. The White House in particular. I don't know why I'm talking about any of this in video games. It's just something that I've thought about before. But yeah, the White House in particular is a very old building that's constantly needing maintenance and improvements. It would make a lot of sense to start over from scratch, leave the White House as it is in Washington, D.C. for tourism purposes, so people can take the tour, but build a new building with modern technology and wiring and things like that in Franklin. Maybe you don't even call it the White House. Maybe you go with the Red House or the Blue House, and then you have a red, white, and blue house over the course of a couple hundred years. Anyways, that's very rambly. That's going to be it for this stream. We didn't quite get everything done, but I think we accomplished enough. Actually, I need one more Bloodcraft. I would like to get that. Also, daily mission starting about an hour, so I might as well just wait 54 minutes and then try again off screen. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.